Have you ever loved someone so deeply, so fully, that you didn't see the knife in their hand until it was already buried in your back? I thought I had everything. A stable job, a beautiful wife, and a best friend I would have taken a bullet for. But life has a twisted sense of humor. My name is Mason Clark, and this is the story of how I lost everything, only to take back more than I ever imagined. It started simple. Amelia and I had been married for 4 years. She was everything to me. Kind, intelligent, full of light. Jason Moore, my best friend since college, was like a brother. We grew up together, built our careers in the same industry, even bought houses on the same street. But behind the smiles, behind the Sunday barbecues and wine nights, something darker brewed. They thought I didn't notice the glances, the long meetings, the weekend trips I wasn't invited to. I brushed it off. Who suspects the two people they trust most in the world? Until I saw the message. Just one. On Amelia's phone. A photo I wasn't meant to see. Jason's voice note that followed, telling her how he missed her warmth when she was with me. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because something in me snapped. But not in rage. In calculation. I watched them from the shadows. And in the process, I met her. Lena Moore, Jason's wife. And while our spouses were busy betraying us, Lena and I were piecing together a plan. A plan that started with truth and ended with justice. You want to know what happened next? How two people left behind turned the table so hard it shattered everything. How a wedding turned into a public disaster. How careers crumbled, reputations were exposed, and secrets led to blood. Then listen closely. Because this is not just a story about revenge. It's about loyalty, about the lines we cross when love is weaponized, and about how sometimes the best way to get even is to love the one your enemies fear the most. How do you think this love triangle will end? Listen to the end, because the twist at the end will leave you breathless. I used to believe my life was the kind people dreamed about. I was 34, living in a quiet cul-de-sac in Portland, Oregon, in a house with white shutters and a swing in the front yard. Every morning, I'd drink my black coffee while Amelia tended to her roses. She loved roses, always said they were beautiful even when bleeding. We had a rhythm. Breakfast at 7, she'd leave for the marketing agency by 8:15. I'd log into my architectural firm from my home office. It was quiet, predictable, safe, and in hindsight, maybe too perfect to be real. Jason and Lena Moore lived 3 houses down. We met them at a neighborhood potluck 5 years ago. Jason and I hit it off instantly. Same sense of humor, same love for old video games and whiskey. We even co-invested in a startup together. He was more than a friend. He was the brother I never had. Lena was the quieter one, thoughtful, soft-spoken, with a kindness that felt too rare. She taught music at the local high school. Amelia loved her instantly, or at least she pretended to. They started doing yoga together on weekends, going shopping, planning couple dinners with us like we were all part of some suburban fairy tale. Looking back, the signs were there. Small, harmless things I didn't think twice about. Like the time Amelia came home late from yoga with Lena, saying they went for smoothies but forgot to take pictures because they were just too into the conversation. Or when Jason started inviting Amelia to marketing conferences, even when Lena couldn't come, saying they worked better as a pitch team. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? I had my own life to worry about. My architecture firm had landed a massive contract redesigning a historic downtown hotel. It consumed most of my time. I thought Amelia understood that. She said she was proud of me. She kissed me every night and told me I was her rock. But even rocks crumble under enough pressure. One night, Jason invited us over for dinner. Just the four of us. Grilled salmon, white wine, some new jazz vinyl spinning in the background. It felt normal. But Lena was quieter than usual. She kept glancing at Amelia like she was about to say something, but thought better of it. When Jason offered Amelia another glass of wine, his hand lingered on her back just a second too long. I noticed. And for the first time, I didn't look away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Amelia, listening to her soft breathing, wondering when it had all started to feel like a performance. So I started paying attention. Amelia had a second phone, one she kept in her yoga bag. She never used to carry a second device. When I asked, she said it was a work thing. When I reached for it one day, she froze. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Jason started texting her more than he did me, and Lena, sweet, gentle Lena, looked more and more like someone carrying a secret she couldn't bear alone. I didn't know it then, but Lena had her own suspicions, her own nights of staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was going crazy. We were both living in a house of mirrors, each reflecting back lies we didn't want to see. And then came the breaking point. A business trip Jason and Amelia were both attending. 3 days, 2 nights. One excuse too many. Lena knocked on my door the second they left. She had tears in her eyes, a folder in her hand, and a tremble in her voice. "We need to talk," she said. That's when everything began. Lena and I sat in the living room that evening, 2 mugs of untouched tea cooling between us. The folder she brought lay unopened on the coffee table, like a bomb we were both too afraid to detonate. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clasped them in her lap, eyes darting toward the door like she expected someone to barge in and stop her. I didn't want to believe it either, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "But you've felt it too, haven't you?" I nodded slowly. Something changed. I just didn't want to admit it. She opened the folder. Inside were screenshots, texts, call logs, blurry photos of Jason's car parked near a hotel in the city. One in particular stood out. A selfie of Amelia and Jason, too close, too familiar, with a timestamp that matched the night she told me she had a late team meeting. It wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal wrapped in layers of calculated lies. "How long?" I asked, my throat dry. 6 months, maybe longer. I found a receipt in Jason's jacket pocket 2 weeks ago. Spa weekend for 2, booked under an alias. She looked up at me, eyes red and tired. "I didn't come here to break your heart, Mason. I came because I couldn't take it anymore. And because I thought you deserved the truth." That night, I sat in the dark after Lena left. The evidence spread across the floor like fragments of a shattered life. My mind raced through memories. Every smile, every touch, every "I love you" that now felt scripted. Was anything real? Amelia came home late, as expected. I watched her walk through the door, set down her purse, and kiss me on the cheek like she always did. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, kissed her back, and tucked the pain deep enough that she wouldn't see it. Not yet. Something had cracked inside me, but it hadn't broken. Not completely. That would come later. For now, I played my part. I hugged her longer than usual. I asked about her day. I made her tea. I held her close that night in bed while she slept, unaware that I knew everything. But in my mind, a switch had flipped. The man she thought would stay quiet, passive, forgiving, that man was gone. and the one replacing him. He had nothing left to lose. I used to believe betrayal came with shouting, tears, maybe even slammed doors or confessions. I never imagined it would arrive in silence, wrapped in routine, masked behind the soft smile of the woman I loved. Amelia had always been the constant in my life, the person who reminded me to breathe when work got overwhelming, who left notes in my bag before business trips, who curled up next to me during thunderstorms as if I could protect her from the world. That's the version of her I kept close to my chest. That's the Amelia I proposed to. But somewhere along the way, the warmth turned cold. Her eyes didn't hold me anymore when we talked. Her laughter no longer reached me. It wandered somewhere else, somewhere unreachable. I didn't notice at first. You don't when you're too close to something. You mistake absence for exhaustion, distance for distraction. You convince yourself everything's fine until it isn't. The shift began with little things. She started coming home later than usual. She stopped leaving her phone face up on the counter. She flinched when I walked in unexpectedly, as if I had interrupted something more than just her scrolling. I told myself not to be paranoid. But the gut doesn't lie. One morning, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear I wasn't. But the message flashed bold and cruel across the screen. It was from Jason, still thinking about last night. I wish we didn't have to sneak around. I froze. My heart didn't pound. It didn't sink. It stopped. Just silence. She came out of the bathroom moments later, wrapped in a towel, humming. She kissed my cheek and asked about my meeting that day. I looked at her, really looked, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing in front of me. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been too easy. I needed to be sure. I needed to know how far the cracks spread before deciding what to do with the pieces. So I watched. For days, I paid attention. I noted how she lingered near her phone, how she suddenly had weekly strategy meetings at 8 p.m., how Jason had started sending friendly texts in our group chat again, testing boundaries like a child seeing how far they could push before a parent snapped. Then came the moment that confirmed everything. She said she had to travel for work, a last-minute retreat for team leaders. She booked the hotel, packed a bag, kissed me goodbye. But something didn't sit right. The dates didn't match the company calendar I had access to, so I followed her. I stayed several cars behind, not wanting to be seen. She didn't head to the retreat center. She drove straight to a cozy Airbnb on the edge of town. Jason arrived 15 minutes later with wine in hand and an overnight bag. I didn't confront them. I just sat in my car, lights off, heart numb. They laughed in the living room. She leaned into him like she used to lean into me. And I realized they hadn't just cheated on us. They had built something, a fantasy they were feeding behind our backs. The next day, Lena showed up at my door, Jason's wife. Her eyes were red, her voice tired. She didn't need to explain. She knew. And now I knew. And there was nothing left but wreckage between us. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she pulled out a folder. Photos, screenshots, call logs, hotel bookings, reservations under fake names. She had everything. I was going to confront them myself, she said, voice breaking. But then I thought, maybe we shouldn't let them walk away clean. I nodded slowly. I didn't say yes, not right away. But I kept the folder. Amelia returned home that night as if nothing had happened. She talked about her retreat, about the keynote speaker she didn't actually hear. I listened. I smiled. I even asked her about dinner plans for the weekend. She looked relieved. She thought the danger had passed. I started planning that same night. With Lena's help, I tracked their meetings, set up alerts for every calendar change on Amelia's account, hired a PI to follow Jason. We found they were planning to move in together. Jason had already toured apartments under a false name. Amelia had emptied one of our joint accounts. They weren't just cheating on us, they were preparing for a life without us. I wasn't going to let them build that life on the ashes of mine. I crafted a plan. I made copies of every document Lena gave me, combined them with financial records, emails, work messages, and internal files that showed Jason had been sneaking Amelia onto projects she wasn't cleared for. They were not just betraying us personally. They were crossing ethical and legal boundaries professionally. I booked a dinner at their favorite restaurant, one I knew they visited together when they thought no one was watching. I invited Jason and Amelia separately, pretending it was a reunion for an old friend visiting town. Lena would be there too, seated with me. When they both walked in hand, expecting a private table, and instead saw us sitting there, calm, composed, with evidence in hand, their faces fell. Jason turned to leave. I stood up and said, "Don't bother. Your boss already has a copy of everything." Amelia tried to speak. I stopped her with a quiet, "Don't." She started crying. Lena didn't blink. I placed a sealed envelope on the table and walked out. That night, I packed Amelia's things. I left them by the door. I texted her the next morning to come pick them up when I wasn't home. She didn't reply. She moved in with Jason, for a while at least. But it didn't last. HR investigated. Jason was demoted. Amelia was let go. Their apartment fell through. Jason's wife filed for divorce. Amelia tried to contact me, but I had changed numbers. I never yelled. I never hit. I never made a scene. But I made sure they lost everything they built on lies. Mason couldn't sleep. The room felt colder than usual, despite the summer air outside. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amelia's tear-streaked face, Jason's guilty expression, and Lena's silence. The betrayal was fresh, still bleeding somewhere deep in his chest. But underneath the hurt, something else stirred. A quiet, relentless hunger for truth. He wasn't the kind of man who lashed out. His instinct had always been to observe, to plan, to act only when the odds were in his favor. And this wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about how long they had lied and how many people might have helped them hide it. He started small. Mason retraced moments in his memory. Lunches canceled, late meetings, those quiet Sunday mornings when Amelia had smiled but kept checking her phone. There had been signs, subtle but present. Now, with the truth revealed, those signs screamed louder. He pulled out an old external hard drive from his desk drawer, the one connected to the security camera app he'd installed a year ago when their neighborhood had a string of break-ins. He'd forgotten all about it. When he opened the folder, it was all there. Video clips, dates, timestamps. He scrolled through, his pulse racing. March 18th. Amelia came home late. Jason's car had been parked across the street an hour earlier. April 2nd, she said she was out with her sister. Jason's car again. May 10th, the night she said she had food poisoning. But Jason had come to the door. Mason watched, silent, unmoving, as his world rebuilt itself in painful, undeniable detail. He began digging into Jason's digital life next. Mason had helped him set up his personal website years ago and still remembered the login structure. He found the hidden photo albums, the ones not linked anywhere publicly, and there, between travel shots and group hangouts, were private images. Amelia on the beach, Amelia in his apartment, Amelia asleep. Each click was a punch to the gut. But Mason didn't confront them. Not yet. He needed more. He reached out to a friend in IT, discreetly. He framed it as a cybersecurity test for a personal concern. Within days, Mason had access to metadata, message backups, and even an old shared drive Jason had forgotten to deauthorize. It was all there. Chat logs, emails, calendar entries. They had been planning this for over a year. The hotel bookings lined up with girls' trips. The calendar events masked as networking dinners. Worst of all, there were notes, dreams, plans, a future without him. Jason had even joked in one email, "Can't wait till it's just us and no more sneaking around." Mason didn't cry. He didn't scream. He printed everything, page after page, and placed it into a thick, black folder. Then he locked it in his safe. Not for revenge, not yet. But because truth needed to be preserved. He wasn't ready to move on. But he was ready to play the long game. Still, one thing gnawed at him. How long had Amelia planned to leave? Was it ever going to be honest? Or was she waiting for the right moment to turn him into the villain of her new story? Then came the break Mason didn't expect. One of Amelia's co-workers, a junior designer named Owen, reached out to him on LinkedIn. The message was brief. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I thought you should know. What they did, it wasn't just personal. Jason used his position to shift project credits. Amelia helped." That was all he needed. Owen agreed to meet in person. Over coffee, he showed Mason files, time-stamped design submissions, altered pitch decks. Jason had been funneling work from team members onto Amelia's plate, artificially boosting her performance. That was how she'd earned a leadership role months ago. Mason's blood boiled. This wasn't love. This was strategy. Worse still, Owen hinted there were rumors about Jason pressuring interns, not just romantically, but professionally. Mason recorded every word, with Owen's permission. If this went to court or the board, it wouldn't just be about betrayal. It would be about ethics, legality, and abuse of power. Mason brought it all to Lena. She listened without blinking, flipping through pages of evidence with a fury that mirrored his own. When she looked up, her voice was steady. "They deserve to lose everything, and we're going to help them do just that." Together, they built a timeline. They mapped every lie, every overlapping meeting, every discrepancy in corporate reporting. They drafted a dossier. Not emotional, not vengeful, just facts. Cold, brutal facts. When it was done, Mason felt the weight shift. Not lifted, but repositioned. He still carried pain, but now he carried purpose too. But Mason wasn't just collecting evidence for himself anymore. A part of him wanted justice, yes. But another part, a quieter, more dangerous part, wanted them to see it coming and know they were powerless to stop it. That was the true satisfaction he chased now. Watching their perfect little world unravel slowly, methodically, under the weight of their own lies. He decided to visit the office building on a Sunday afternoon. Empty, quiet, almost eerie. He still had access as a former contractor who occasionally gave tech support for the company. Security nodded him in without a second glance. On the 10th floor, he slipped into the empty marketing department, where both Amelia and Jason had their offices. He wasn't there to steal anything. That wasn't necessary. He was there to verify. And he did. Amelia's drawers were filled with drafts of campaign presentations that were supposed to be Jason's. Post-it notes with his handwriting guided her tone, outlined pitch strategies. It confirmed everything Owen had said. But more than that, Mason noticed something else. A photo frame tucked behind her monitor. It was a picture of him and Amelia, taken 2 years ago on their anniversary. She'd kept it, but turned it toward the wall. He didn't feel sadness. He felt clarity. As he left the office, he noticed a calendar left open on the desk of Jason's assistant. A few weeks ahead, a company-wide quarterly review meeting was scheduled. Executives, board members, department leads, everyone would be there. A perfect audience. Mason's mind clicked into place. That would be the day. Back home, he and Lena finalized the timeline. They rehearsed the facts like a courtroom drama. Lena had already contacted an internal HR representative she trusted, framing it as an anonymous report. The wheels were in motion. All they had to do now was wait. My heart didn't pound when I confronted her. It didn't need to. The rage had long since calcified into a calm precision. The day I chose wasn't random. It was their anniversary. Not hers and mine, hers and his. Calum had always been too predictable. And Seraphine, well, her guilt had made her sloppy. I waited in the living room of our father's estate, a place she hadn't visited since he passed. I told her I had something from the will, something important. She arrived promptly at 7 p.m., and her violin case in hand, probably coming from rehearsal, wearing her usual black trench coat and soft heels. I greeted her with a glass of wine. She accepted it with a tight smile, her eyes scanning the room. "You said this was about Dad's will." "It is," I said, "but not the way you think." From my blazer pocket, I pulled out the small black flash drive and tossed it onto the table between us. She didn't touch it, just stared. "That," I said, "is everything. The security footage, the travel logs, phone records, the deleted messages you thought were gone." Her face went pale, but she held her ground. "What are you talking about, Alaric?" I leaned forward. "Don't insult me." She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she looked down, almost contemplative. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to make sure you'd never see a cent from Vane Technologies. Long enough to understand how deep your betrayal really went." She closed her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Save it. I'm not interested in your version of how things spiraled." She opened her eyes again, and for the first time, I saw the mask crack. "He said you wouldn't find out." There it was. Confirmation. Calum and Seraphine. My best friend and my sister. The two people I built everything for. "Did you love him?" I asked, not sure why I even needed the answer. She hesitated. "I don't know." That was worse than yes. I stood and turned toward the door. "You should go." But as she gathered her things, I said one last thing. "Oh, and Seraphine? You'll be receiving a subpoena tomorrow morning. You'll be listed as a cooperating witness in the fraud investigation. You'll want to talk." She froze. "You're dragging me into this?" "You dragged yourself." Next came Calum. He was always the louder one, the one who'd storm into rooms like he owned them. I invited him to the club we used to frequent back in college. A sleek, members-only place with velvet booths and moody jazz. He looked surprised to see me. "Didn't expect you to reach out. I figured you owed me a drink." We ordered 2 bourbons. I let him talk first, as he always did. Some nonsense about old times, deals he was closing, how well business was going. Then I asked, "How's Seraphine?" His glass paused midair. "Excuse me?" he asked. I smiled. "You heard me?" He chuckled nervously. I think you're mistaken. I'm not. His face shifted, still defensive, but cracks forming. Look, man, whatever you think, I know everything. I have documents tracing funds from Bain's Innovation Fund to your boutique firm. I have evidence Seraphine provided insider updates about our board. You used her, or maybe she used you. But either way, you both screwed me. He stood up. This is insane. I stood too, towering over him. Sit down. The bouncer was watching now. Kylam sat. I've given the evidence to the authorities, but I did something else too. I spoke to the shareholders. The moment your name appears in the scandal, they'll drop your pending acquisition. You'll lose your firm, Kylam. Alaric, you should have thought of that before sleeping with my sister. He looked genuinely shaken now. She said you wouldn't find out. I scoffed. You two really deserve each other. Then I walked away. Fallout came quickly. The story broke 2 days later. Tech blogs ate it up. Insider leak exposes corruption at Bain Technologies. My face wasn't in the articles, but Kylam's was. So was Seraphine's. The board met within hours. They voted to suspend her pending internal review. Kylam's acquisition collapsed. Investors bailed. He made a public statement, tried to distance himself, but the damage was done. One by one, his clients walked. I never spoke to him again. Seraphine, on the other hand, reached out. I ignored her calls. She showed up at my loft once, eyes swollen, clutching a letter. I didn't do it to hurt you, she said. But you did. I thought he loved me. And I thought you were my sister. Her breath caught. I am. Not anymore. She stepped closer. Please, don't erase me. You did that yourself. She left the letter. I burned it unread. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt. I restructured the company, appointed a new compliance officer, and ensured nothing like this could ever happen again. I met with investors, was transparent about the internal failings, and slowly regained trust. But more importantly, I started healing. Revenge didn't fix the betrayal, but it made sure it never happened again. And that, for now, was enough. The silence after the explosion was deafening. Not literal, of course. There had been no bombs or crashes, just the quiet devastation left in the wake of truth. Seraphine sat beside me in my apartment, the same one that once smelled of guilt and suspicion, now thick with something heavier, vindication and grief. Kylam had been fired from the firm within 24 hours. Once the board saw the footage of him manipulating our clients for personal gain, and the audio recordings of him bragging to Seraphine about how easily he'd gotten me ousted. There was no room left for negotiation. He tried to threaten legal action, but with his reputation in ashes and the firm facing scrutiny, he folded quickly, tail tucked, pride shattered. Seraphine moved out the next day. She didn't cry when she left Kylam. She just took her violin case, a single suitcase, and a stack of letters she had once written for me, but never dared to send. She left the wedding ring Kylam had given her on the kitchen counter, right next to a crumpled photograph of the three of us smiling like we hadn't been living a lie. For weeks, I couldn't decide what I felt more of, anger or relief. My career slowly stitched itself back together. Clients who had left when I did began to reach out, curious, supportive. Some even apologized. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My name was no longer just cleared. It was respected again. But inside, a different war had begun. Because when someone betrays you, it doesn't end with the confrontation. That's just the beginning of the aftermath. Every idle moment becomes a trap. Every silence feels like a vacuum, echoing with, why? Why me? Why her? Why now? Seraphine and I didn't speak for almost 2 months after it all came crashing down. I knew she had moved into a small loft near the waterfront. I knew she played in a local orchestra on weekends. I even knew she had started seeing a therapist. But I didn't know what to say. One afternoon, I found a note slipped under my door. It was written in her handwriting, elegant, careful, as if afraid the ink itself might break. You once told me music was the only place where you felt safe. I didn't understand that until I played after everything fell apart. I thought I could survive knowing I'd lost you. But I was wrong. If you can find even a sliver of forgiveness left in you, come to the concert hall tomorrow at 7. I stared at that note longer than I care to admit. The next evening, I sat alone in the second row of a modest auditorium, the kind built more for honesty than spectacle. And there she was, Seraphine, dressed in black, lit only by the softest stage lights, playing the most heart-wrenching solo I had ever heard. There were no lyrics, no apologies, just raw emotion carved into each note. It didn't erase what she had done, but it spoke to something deeper than words, something I hadn't realized I still needed. After the final bow, she walked straight to me, didn't say a word, just waited. I stood, looked at her, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I let myself breathe. I'm not going to say we got back together. That would be too neat, too scripted. Life rarely gives us endings like that. But we did talk, over coffee, then dinner, then long walks. And maybe, just maybe, we're learning how to rebuild. Not what we had, but something new, something earned. As for Calum, he left the city. Rumors say he tried to start his own firm in Miami, but last I heard, he'd burned bridges too fast and too wide. He went from headlines to footnotes. And me? I've learned that revenge doesn't always look like fire and fury. Sometimes it looks like silence, like patience, like watching those who hurt you crumble under the weight of their own choices. And sometimes it looks like forgiveness. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because letting go isn't weakness. It's power. It's freedom.